Maybe some of you have read the news that United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres delivered a chief video message on the 9th of April, saying that I urge governments to put girls and women in the center of their efforts to recover from COVID-19. So the international organizations like UN and other and also the governments are really putting efforts to combating the COVID-19 together. So speaking of some of the gender impact of the COVID-19, I basically have six subtitle to cover. The first one is the gender-based violence. So experience and the data has shown that especially during the pandemic, during this global health issues, sexual and gender-based violence increase during this crisis and disasters. It happened before. It happened between the 2014 to 2016 when Ebola was happening, and 2015 to 2016 when Zika epidemic is happening, and even before, like the SARS and the H1N1, when people are locked down at home, the domestic violence, especially the gender-based violence, are surging. So it appears that it's happening now all around the world, no matter what country. Even in the advanced country like New Zealand or the UK or Germany or France, the developed countries, they also have a surge, have an increase in domestic violence. Helpline are greatly increased. So under this condition, quarantine and stay-at-home measures, women and children who live with violence and controlling men are exposed to a considerably greater danger. So I'll give three examples here. So in China, the hotline for the domestic violence victim helpline is 3 times higher than the euro, and the government is taking actions. So for example, before we issue the protection order through the court, but now we change it into online, so people can apply for the protection order online. And we also, as the civil society, our volunteers, our NGOs are also acting towards it. So for example, there's a campaign online saying writing a letter to your community. So by signing this letter, by putting out on the promotion window, you're standing with the domestic violence victim. So this is also awareness raising measure that we are doing here in China. So apart from China, in Mexico, according to the data, we see that the first 4 months in Mexico, the gender-side victims, the number was 987. So 987 women were killed in the first 4 months in Mexico. And only in March alone, this month, the Mexico hotline for the domestic violence received over 20,000 phone calls. And yes?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Yes, and in France, the call has also increased by 36%. So the French government has set some of the call for help station in the pharmacy, and they have also allocated some hotel for the domestic violence victims. So that's one part. The gender-based violence is happening. The other part is that I'm sure we pretty much more or less have experienced this ourselves. I myself experienced as well. It's the double burden of female. So we are working outside, we are earning money, we're supporting the family, supporting the home, but at home we're also doing housework, which is unpaid. So globally, women perform like slightly over 70 of the hours of unpaid care work at home, and men only perform less than a quarter of hours of unpaid care work. So during lockdown, when men and women are both locked down in their home, so usually it's the woman who's taking care of the family, who's doing the housework, who's doing the cleaning and taking care of children. And also women make up the majority of the service staff at the healthcare facilities, such as cleaners and laundry workers. So During the lockdown, the responsibility mainly falls upon to women's care and women's responsibility. And with more children at home, the school is shut down as well. And the responsibility of taking care of their children also falls upon mostly to women. Yeah, that's basically about the double burden that women experience during the COVID-19. For this phenomenon, I have seen some interesting stories. So, for example, in February, one of the province in China, Shandong province, which is also a very patriarchy culture located. It's a very traditional province. So the local government issued a suggestion to women to say, we suggest that women to stay at home and take care of the babies. So this topic raised a very hot and controversial discussion online. So women are protesting against it. Why you as a government, you suggest women to stay at home, but you don't suggest the husband, to take care of the baby more. And also in late March, interesting story in Malaysia. So Malaysia's Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development issued a series of online posters on Facebook and Instagram with the hashtag Women Prevent COVID-19. But it is advised that the women can help with the country's lockdown by not nagging their husbands, avoid wearing home clothes, dress up as usual, and even put the makeup on. So they're blaming the woman for maybe the domestic violence or the household burden. They ask the woman. They have the extra expectation to women, and they're putting so less on the man and husband. Some interesting story to share. The third part I want to talk about the gender impact of the COVID-19 is economically. So in the short term, some experts predict that the pandemic will have a disproportionate negative effects on the employment opportunity for women compared to men. At least two factors suggest that this effect of this crisis on women and men are very likely to be different. Firstly, in previous recessions, such as the 2008 and 2009, the economic crisis, this have affected more about the men's employment much more severely than women. One of the reasons is because men work in the sectors heavily affected by a standard downturn, such as the manufacturing and construction field. But women's employment are mostly concentrated in less cynical sectors. So, for example, women are working as a health caregiver, and as teachers in education. But COVID-19 is a different picture. It's a different story. So COVID-19 is a crisis that have a negative impact on these service occupations. So this service occupations is very much highly dominated by female, such as restaurants and hotels. So this may some predict that this may impact the women's employment negatively in the future. Another point is that even more important factor for the differential impacts of women and men is that in the course of a pandemic, most countries have decided to close schools and daycare facilities. As I mentioned before, this is because the school has shut down, the children has to stay at home. And so this has a dramatically increase in the need of the childcare. Grandparent-provided health care is now discouraged because COVID-19 is mostly impacting the elders with an underlying condition already. So most family has no choice but to take care of their children themselves. So based on the existing distribution of child care responsibility, in most families, the mothers are more likely to do this task than their fathers. And let's not to mention the single moms, the single parent who don't have any supporter or helper at home. So finally, generally speaking, women are particularly vulnerable economically. Globally, women's personal finance are weaker than men's, and their position in the labor market is less secure. The fourth part I want to touch upon is the healthcare providers. So as you may have seen or you may have read in the news, or you may have seen yourself, the majority of those in the front line of the pandemic are women. So the healthcare providers are mostly women, and we need to empower these women by providing more resources, more protection, who also assume primary responsibility for their housework. The data from the data in China from the State Council Information Office suggests that more than 90% of the healthcare workers in Hubei province. Hubei province is the first province that is heavily hit by this pandemic. In Hubei province, more than 90% of the healthcare givers are women. There's a report issued by the Women in Global Health, this organization. They have a campaign called Operation 50/50. So according to their data, they are saying that 10% of the representative of U.S. coronavirus task force, 10% are women, but 20% of the WHO emergency committee on COVID-19 are women, and only 16% of the WHO China joint mission on COVID-19 are women. This is a portrait that women, although women makes up to 90%, in some places are 70%, make the majority of the healthcare givers. In a leadership position, women are less portrayed. They are also saying that for every 3 men quoted in the media coverage of the COVID-19 outbreak, only 1 woman is quoted. I myself have experience as well. So when we are promoting the health givers online for combating this COVID-19 pandemic, I rarely see women's face. It is mostly man doctor. So the women's voices are less portrayed. In response for this, some activists in China have issued some campaigns to help women, and we have a hashtag called Let's See the Female Worker on the internet. And there's also a very famous NGO who initiated a campaign to donate the PPE, the personal protective equipment, especially for women, because those equipment are at a very hard shortage. So most of the women, the doctors and nurses, they have to wear it all day, and they don't have the chance to take it off. So we are donating the pads, the giant pads like a diaper, for the women to wear, so that they don't have to go to the toilet quite often. The next part I want to talk about is the government budgeting. So some governments are having a very difficult time to deal with the COVID-19, especially in some developing countries. Women account for the majority of the world's older population, particularly over 60, but they tend to have less access to health service than men do. The worst case is that in several countries that has experienced previous epidemic, the provision of sexual and reproductive health service, including the parental and maternal health care and access to contraceptive and the safe abortions were reduced as soon as the resources are limited. So let me just give you one example. So last month I was talking to my co-worker in India, and she said in India the national budget was cut down from national budget for reproductive health for women and children was cut down from 20% to 7%. So the money was saved to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. So some governments are cutting the budget for women's health to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, which is is very unfair. And the final part I want to talk about is, I kind of mentioned this before, is that the leadership, women in leadership are less portrayed and don't take much as the men do, especially at the high level leadership. The data I see here is that women only account for less than 20% in the WHO, the World Health Organization, emergency committee on COVID-19, and only 16% in China Joint Mission for COVID-19, and only 10% in US Coronavirus Task Force. While we are having this gender impact generally, the UN has also issued a policy. A policy is called the impact of COVID-19 on women. So I highly recommend you to read if you are interested in this topic, but there are several points that I can briefly talk about. So the first is that they urge government to ensure women's equal representation in all COVID-19 response planning and decision making. So this is to increase female leadership at the top, to ensure that we engage women's voice in dealing with the COVID-19. And second one is the drive transformative change for quality by addressing the care economy, paid and unpaid. So this is to secure women's financially. In the formal economic care jobs, from teachers to nurses, are underpaid in relation to other sectors. At home, women perform a lot of health care work, but they are unpaid and invisible. So the UN is advocating to acknowledge the economic worth, value of the unpaid housework. And the third one is they target women and girls in all efforts to address the socio-economic impact of COVID-19. So as the General Secretary mentioned, we need to put girls and women at the center of all the solutions, because we say women's rights are human rights, but we rarely put women's need at hand. We rarely take their needs into consideration. So these are the three cross-cutting priorities that reflects the Secretary General's call to actions on human rights, which single out measure that, if pursued, would have a meaningful impact to the rights of girls and women. And these measures have become more vital in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. But there are also some other resources that, if you're interested in, you can have a look. There's a statement called the Call for Feminist COVID-19 Policy Statement, and it has been endorsed by more than 1,600 individuals and Women's Network and more than 500 organizations from more than 100 countries, to demand the states to the adoption of feminist policy to address the great challenges posed by COVID-19. This is initiated by women from the Global South and from marginalized communities in the Global North, and was coordinated by the Feminist Alliance for Rights, is called FAR. So if you're interested, I can send a link in the chat. Yes, that's pretty much it. I just briefly talked about some gender impact of the COVID-19. Of course, the COVID-19 is not finished. So here now in Beijing, we have most likely a second wave of COVID-19 is hitting us. So both yesterday and the day before, we have tested nearly 100 new confirmed cases. We have now experiencing a second lockdown, especially for some communities. So definitely COVID-19 is not finished, and the gender impact of the COVID-19 may as well lasting for a long time. So that's why we have to jointly take some actions to protect our girls and women. So thank you. That's basically it for my sharing, but I'm open for discussion and more ideas.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yunmei, for your explanations about the gender effect that happens today in our worlds and happens with the women and girls around. So basically, I am pretty interested with the sexual reproductive health access now because what I realize and what I experience now in Indonesia, it's same maybe in all around the world, about women can access to to the reproductive health, to consultations about the sexual reproductive health. It's really limited here also. And what do you think about this one, about what do you think that government should do, or government must having like a stakeholder to the national government organizations or civil society organization? And what do you think about this? What the solutions that can government and NGO and also civil society organization can do?
I think that's a very good question. So when the pandemic just started in Hubei, in Wuhan, in Hubei province, in Wuhan, we have heard voices from the pregnant women who are who are in their pregnancy, but they have less health care because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They don't dare to go out. They can't go to hospital, and the hospital are jam-packed. So the hospital are very dangerous for pregnant women to go to. So we quickly, some volunteers online, this is the efforts from the civil society, some volunteers online are calling the government, local government, asking them to have a special hospital for the pregnant women. So the government acts quickly, and they have set up a special hospital for all pregnant women in Wuhan, in Hubei province, to go to their normal check. But of course they have to wear like a mask, and they have to protect themselves properly. But yeah, I think government can definitely do a lot about it. One thing is that government should really listen to people, listen to women, what they need, because especially some top government officials, they are men, and they can't think of when they are not in that position. So for example, a high government official, if he doesn't have any pregnant woman at his house or around him, he can rarely think of the need of pregnant women during this crisis. And the voice online are too much, but the government should really listen to what women and girls are needed, and they can put the ideas into actions very quickly. They need to respond very quickly. But apart from this, I also think the government should have more, as I said, female leaders, because the women leaders would have a diverse voice, would have a different perspective in dealing with this crisis together. Yeah.
All right. So it's a very interesting, especially for me, Yunmei. Talking about like we need to put women in the center, but talking about the refugee women now and got affected from the COVID-19 too, as well. Because I heard so many news about refugees women cannot get access to clean water, also sexual reproductive health, and also the educations during the COVID-19, the limited access to informations and technology, sanitations and hygiene, also a pad or a period. Maybe we as a woman, we have like a period time, like they having a limited access to this. So what do you think about this? Do the organizations like UN refugees and then UN women address these issues well, or there is something like struggling more on women refugees now?
I think the refugee and women is a very interesting intersection issues, because when what we are advocating is that we want to have every program designed with a gender mainstream perspective. So we need to put women's need as also women's need into our consideration when we are designing the project. So when we are dealing with the refugee problem, maybe we need to have more gender perspective. So say we put a woman's need, like access to reproductive health, the pads, and other healthcare into the center. But I didn't really pay much attention to the refugee crisis during the COVID-19, because that seems a little bit far away from me, because in China, especially in this situation. But I think definitely the intersectionality is where the gender perspective should be put in. And that's why we are advocating the gender mainstreaming message in every program designing, including the governmental project.
All right, thank you, Yunmei. Or maybe everyone here want to give the questions or uh, like your opinion about these issues about gender impact to the COVID-19. You can unmute your microphone if you have any questions, everyone, or opinion.
Sorry, my cat is having a question first.
Or you can type on the chat box.
So I'm just curious. Our participants today are GirlUp club members in Indonesia?
Yes, mostly it's a GirlUp member, but mostly it's a MINGO member too. Yeah,
Okay.
so for my women's center, you may. Yeah.
Okay. How's everyone? How are you doing?
Hi everyone. You can unmute your microphone if you want to speak, or you want to type on the chat box.
So what's happening in Indonesia? I'm assuming people are shy to ask questions, so I'm going to raise some topics. So
Yeah.
how's the situation in Indonesia?
Yeah, it's same. I think it's quite same. You may in the China itself, we have a limited access to healthcare, also clean water and food. So many people now on unemployment, get out from their jobs and on the office, and also yeah, some of the kids and children, the girls around cannot get access to online class because of the internet access. In Indonesia is really hard in grassroots level. Now we are facing more difficultly in grassroots level, I think, because in the city the internet access are quite better than the grassroots level, but in the grassroots level the situation's really quite worse, because the informations about the COVID-19, the informations about how we should do or facing this disease, they don't know about that. It's less of information here. And now the number of the affected people is still increasing until today. Yeah, also in grassroots level to access to a period tools like pads, clean water, something like that. It's really difficult here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's the school? The school and university is still shut down?
Yeah, it's still shut down, but most of them still working at the university. So, but we still have the online class here. Yeah. So
It's here, yeah.
yeah, Yunmei. Oh, talking about labor market, Yunmei. a gender effect now, it's a effect to the labor market itself. So what about in labor market in China, or in maybe in some of country in Asia Pacific too facing this problem? Like what is the differential effects that expected between men and women in the labor market, especially in Asia Pacific?
I'm not sure if I can speak for all Asia Pacific countries, but just some personal observation here. So COVID-19 has made online working, like remote working, very popular. But this, as we talked about before, this is only for the work that requires that don't requires you go there day to day, day by day. So, for example, my work, I can do remote working. I can work from home. Some general jobs like HR or some like sales or education, they can still do online. But there are a lot of people cannot achieve this, so their work can be replaced if they don't go there to work. So that's why I think the COVID-19 has a huge, heavier impact on those jobs, and those jobs are like say working in a restaurant, working in a hotel, working in the cinema, which are all heavily impacted for because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Um, if we are talking about gender impact on this, is that as I said before, the service field, service occupation are mostly female. So when the restaurant, when the cinema, when the hotel are shut down, so the women are more likely to lose jobs. And for those who cannot achieve, not achieve, but for those whose job cannot be done online, be done virtually, they're at a greater risk because of the pandemic. And I'm sure the labor market, the unemployment rate has been raising in every country because of the economy. The COVID-19 has greatly impacted the economy. It's basically, I cannot say same, but it's a similar situation in all countries. We see the unemployment rate are surging in the US. We didn't see much data here in China, but I know there are many people suffering because of this, because they lose their jobs, they cannot pay the rent, they cannot afford to pay the mortgage, etc. So their life is very hard. So I'm assuming in the coming like a year or so, depending on if we have the vaccine, vaccination.
Yeah.
Depending if we have that, the economy will be low for a while, and that impacts the employment as well.
Okay, May. So what about the domestic violence, like a sexual harassment? Like how many percentage in China now who are got abused or as a victim of sexual violence during COVID-19?
So in general, I would say, in general, before COVID-19, our data is that 1 in 3 women has experienced physical violence in their lifetime. In some places, the rate are lower in China, but in some places are higher. So during COVID-19, so many of my friends who are in NGOs working to combat with the domestic violence, they see and they can predict once we have the lockdown order, stay-at-home order, they predict that the domestic violence rate will surge. So now during the first several months of COVID-19, now it's better because many cities in China has stopped the lockdown, has ended the stay-at-home order. Now it's better. But in the first several months, they are the data says there are 3 times more domestic violence help hotline calling in, and many of my friends are doing like online campaign raising awareness for the domestic violence. They are writing letters. They are using the hashtag online, and the lawyer gets more call for the divorce cases as well. So once the lockdown order is over, and we see in the Ministry of Public Affairs, the divorce rate surge because people are stuck together, and partly because of the domestic violence. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I'm agree with divorced. Like now in Indonesia, I think the data has increased. Like a divorce a family because they are stuck at home, and then
Yeah.
they like fight each other. It's a gender impact as well. I think. Yeah. What about girls around like girls children uh do they suffering to get a food every day, or suffering hunger situations now, because in Indonesia so many homeless people, especially women and girls under 10 years old, they are suffering to get food, nutrition, milk every day, and then it's a bad in nutrition for the young girls in Indonesia. What about in China, or you see in around the world?
So the news I saw is that I think that depends on the education system. So, for example, in China, we have schools that are providing lunch for them, but also we are different in systematically than the boarding schools. Let's say, for example. So the news I saw is that, for example, in the U.S., because of the school shutdown, the children cannot get lunch from school, and they are suffering hunger. But in China, we are quite different story. So our primary school education and the junior education are free. So I didn't see much news about girls are suffering hunger. Unlike in the U.S., maybe you see people are asking for donations to feed the kids, but our public education and the nutrition are free at the very basic level. So there are not much. Maybe there are, but I didn't see much news coming from the suffering.
All right, Yunmei. Everyone, if you have any questions, just unmute your microphone, or you have an opinion. It's free to express your opinion here. Maybe Leah, you want to say something, or you have any questions? Leah. Okay, we have a questions here. So Yunmei, this is from Leah, one of the GirlUp's member in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. Here this question: what is the most effective way to raise awareness about gender inequality when our surrounding don't think it happens?
Interesting questions. Hi, Leah. I run into this question a lot because most of my work is to do awareness raising, and there are so much controversial discussion happening, both online and in person. What I learned from is that people are biased, and because of they have bias, they only choose to believe what they want to believe. It's very hard for us to change their perception if they don't see the facts. And sometimes people refuse to listen to the facts because they because the belief challenge their belief, or maybe they just don't care. But I think it's very important to change the behavior. So sometimes we learn from the psychology that the behavior also affects your attitude. So if you yourself and the friend around you, your reference network, the people around you are acting like you do, you do gender equality, you raise awareness of gender equality, you are speaking for girls, you are speaking for the voiceless girls, and you are paying attention to those in need, especially girls, and people can follow you. And once the people follow you or they notice what you're doing, they might change their perception. But it's very hard. It's for me as well. It's very hard to acknowledge that people have bias. So if we ourselves can take that in first, acknowledge that people have bias, ourselves included, and maybe we can take it easier on ourselves, and then we can start doing by what we can do little by little and change the behaviors, and then behavior change attitudes.
Yeah. Thank you, May. So we will have like one more questions, everyone, before we end our sessions today. Everyone want to speak, or you just want to type on the chat box, please? All right, there it is. It's from Anastasia Cristela. Hi, I just want to ask, is there any protocol for pregnant women in your country during this pandemic? I think Indonesia hasn't built any further protocol, especially for pregnant women. What do you think, Yunmei?
Protocol for pregnant women. Actually, I'm not sure if I can answer this question, because I didn't interact much with the pregnant women. I did saw their voice online though, and many volunteers are advocating for their rights during this pandemic. But I'm not sure if we have, especially from the government perspective, if we have set up any protocols for pregnant women. Maybe I can look it up online and get back to you later. Not sure if I can answer this question right now, because I didn't pay much attention to the pregnant women in my country.
Okay, so thank you, Yunmei. Okay, maybe we can have one more for everyone. Can I have one more from Inda, maybe, or Atia Fadila? You want to say something, or you want to have a questions? Okay. Okay, I think there's no more questions.
Okay.
Okay, Yunmei. Anyway, thank you so much, Yunmei, for your time today. Yeah, especially for the gender impact now that women's facing, especially like gender-based violence and also unpaid care works for women, and also heterarchy, a system like mindset of heterarchy that women should stay at home, and also us economically independent for women now, because like a single parent woman really suffering for get like job, food, and also for raising their children, and then also the labor market, and also healthcare access, water clean access, information access, the pets, and also the government budgeting has been cut by the government itself for the healthcare for women now. And also for the leadership one, this is like the most interesting, like leadership. So less than 10% of women involved in the parliament, especially maybe especially in Indonesia. In Indonesia, we have like rule like 30% women must involve in the parliament, but in the reality, just less than 10% of women who involve in this as a decision maker in Indonesia. Maybe some of the public policy, I think, like they don't see women can involve in the public policy. So I think women need more public policy in this case. And also, we need to put women in center, because of we have the special things like woman pregnant, and then also a period poverty, and we need access to the healthcare during the COVID-19. So thank you so much, Yunmei, for your time today. Wish you stay safe and stay healthy in China. Thank you. It's such a great honor for us. So thank you everyone for your participations. So thank you, Yunmei. Have a great
Thank you
day.
for having me. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye.